There's a moment in a lot of people's lives, particularly in retirement, when at some point their identity gets taken away. The job title, the routine, the thing they call their career, what they do next tells you everything about them. Today's guest is David Hermakowski, a man who spent decades building a respected career as a producer, director and editor behind the cameras of some of Canada's biggest sports broadcasters. And then, like it does for many of us, eventually that chapter ended. But before David could even settle into what came next, life handed him something far heavier. A misdiagnosis that ended with major brain surgery. This didn't stop David, however. He faced the new situation, got brave and got writing. Since then he's published novels, researched the psychology of retirement and found that, remarkably, the cognitive fire hadn't gone out. If anything, it burned cleaner. In this conversation we talk about what retirement really means for a person's sense of purpose, how to face a life or death moment with your head held high, the craft of writing fiction, and what it means to reinvent yourself, not out of desperation, but out of a genuine creative hunger. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to Undercurrent Stories, David.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on. Primarily, I got you on because I wanted to talk about your book about retirement, but I know there's a lot of other things that you do. But first of all, David, just for listeners' benefit, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your life's journey growing up and sort of what got you into what you do now?
Well, I've had quite a journey. I've lived in a lot of cities in Canada and been back and forth, and that's sort of like a really good thing. I was very happy about that. Living in Montreal, Vancouver, Ottawa, and then kind of landing in Toronto, where I had a very long broadcasting career, working behind the scenes of various sports networks in Toronto, basically all the major ones. I worked at the CBC for quite a few years, which is comparable with the BBC for people in the UK. And it was great. It was a great career. I absolutely loved it. I succeeded quite a bit at it, and it was very fulfilling. Eventually, I was packaged out by my employer because the business itself is kind of shrinking, and I'm kind of coming to that age as well. That it's around that time that I'm looking at retirement, and so anyway, so that started my journey insofar as writing goes. I've always been a creative individual. I painted when I was young. I went to art school. I was a graphic designer at one point, and I also play music. I have like 6 guitars, and so writing was always something that for years, like decades, I'd have these stories in my head and that I would think, I'd really like to begin writing one day. And so anyway, I was packaged out in 2018, and that started me on to my writing process. And I published 2 novels with a publisher that did okay. There were some growing pains there, but then I had brain surgery. I just finished publishing my second novel, and more or less went down with focal seizures in September of, I believe it was 2022, and was brought to the hospital. And it's funny because, well, it really isn't funny, but looking back on it, it is funny. Initially, they had misdiagnosed me with a malignant brain tumor, and my prognosis was like very dire. And so we were living in the outskirts of Toronto at the time in a town called Barrie. And they medicavaced me to St. Michael's in Toronto, which is renowned for its neurology. And it's funny because as I'm being led out of the hospital, everybody's going out to me and saying, all the best, all the best. It's like, I've always had this ability to look at my life in a third person. And you almost look at that and you think, oh my God, that's almost like a Simpsons joke.
Yeah.
Like, you're in dire straits when, like, everybody in the hospital is going up to you saying, all the best, we wish you the best. And anyway, so as you can see, I'm quite a talker. So, long story short, um, I make it to St. Mike's and they diagnosed me more properly as having a meningioma. And that still required brain surgery and a craniotomy, which meant that they were basically cutting my skull open. So they did that, and they took out the amount of brain matter that would be equivalent to a pine cone, like size and shape.
Wow.
And I survived it, and it took a while. And so here we are now, about 3 years later, and I feel it's a slow process of getting your cognition back, and actually asking yourself, am I able to continue what I was doing? And so I wrote the book on retirement because, number one, I've always wanted to do nonfiction as well. I mean, fiction is my big passion, but I've always wanted to do some nonfiction ideas as well. And so I did this as kind of like an ease into writing type of process, which it really wasn't. I mean, it requires a lot of research as well. But it kind of showed me that I can do it.
Yeah.
Rub the sense of humor that I have into the book. And that was a fun process. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. And currently I'm working on 2 novels. I'm not quite sure which one I'm going to go ahead with.
I'd like to talk about those, but first of all, if I could just go back to your broadcasting career. You were actually a presenter, were you?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't on air. I was behind the scenes. I was a producer, director, and editor.
Yeah.
And most of the editing I did was in post-production, which was doing commercials and promos and like higher end stuff than normal.
Yeah.
Which I valued and really enjoyed.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about what challenges you faced in life, but you just explained what a challenge you had to go through with especially with the misdiagnosis. I mean, I know you've got a sense of humor. Do you think your sense of humor sort of helped you through all that?
You know what? Not in that case. Like, it was a very dire situation, and I was going into brain surgery where the outcome could very well have been death. It could have been paralysis. It could have been any number of things. At that point in time, my mindset is what carried me through that more than anything else.
Yeah.
I had decided that I would be brave for my family, and I was. And, I remember when I was on the brain surgery ward, I actually had to wait 2 weeks for my brain surgery. And they kept me on steroids to keep the inflammation down in my brain from my meningioma. And there was another older gentleman like myself there, who had just heard that he had to have brain surgery, and he was basically going to his wife and he says, "Oh, I'm a goner. I'm never going to make it," and that sort of thing. And I thought, that's the exact opposite of how I'm approaching this. I'm not afraid. I was never afraid going into it. And I wanted to be brave for my wife, for my family. And it turned out great. I mean, there were hurdles. The pain that I had coming out of surgery was unbelievable. And, I had to kind of learn to walk again and things like that. So, I mean, but that was a quick learning curve. So that wasn't so bad. But I mean, there are long-term effects as well. My memory is a huge huge effect, which is interesting because it doesn't really seem to be holding me back as a writer.
Well, one of the things I was interested to ask was, you mentioned that you wrote the book on retirement soon after, and also it involved quite a lot of research. And how much do you think that helped in your recovery in terms of sort of getting the neurons to fire across and sort of rebuild that part of the brain that was affected?
I think it was more of knowing what I can do in that space, because my recovery came before that. Like I was pretty sure I could write at the point where I started writing again, because I actually was doing some freelance work as a video editor for the broadcasting teams that I had previously worked with. And I'm a very, like, I'm an intellectual guy. I like being intellectually engaged. My guitar playing was like increasing. Like I'm a better guitar player than I ever was, and I've been playing for 50 years.
Oh, that's good.
So like as far as intellectual stimuli goes, I was always someone challenging myself. So in a way, I sort of knew that I can do it. But like I said, my biggest fear was memory.
Yeah.
And especially now, where you're writing a novel and you have concurrent themes going throughout the duration of the novel, that's still a road I have to pass and see whether I can do that. But I think I can.
Yeah.
But the research is just a matter of collecting data and organizing it in the way that you think that would be helpful for the reader.
Yes.
And so it was a fun process, and I didn't really feel too challenged throughout it.
Yeah. So the book's called The Ultimate Gift of Living Your Best Life in Retirement.
Yes.
Tell us about what the book talks about. What are the main themes?
Well, the main themes is the whole process of going through retirement. One of the first things that happens is what's called identity shift or identity fusion, where a lot of people, men and women, they spend 50, 60, 40, 30 years focused on a career that defines them in many ways. Like I know that when I was going through my career in broadcasting, which was very rewarding, some of my identity was tied to that, but I never wanted it to be the consumption of all my identity. So I think I was in a bit of a better place than some other people are when they retire. But that's the first hurdle when you're retiring, is that identity shift and this like all of a sudden wealth of time that you have and not necessarily knowing what to do with it.
So does the book, sorry to interrupt. I hope you don't mind me interrupting when I come across a question. Otherwise I'll forget it.
I know I can ramble on. So,
and I know we've got a bit of a time delay, so that doesn't help, but we'll get through it. So when you talk about, I know exactly what you're talking about there with the loss of sort of how you're defined by your role or whatever. Do you offer advice and guidance in the book?
Yeah, I would say I think the mindset is the most important thing, and giving yourself space to adjust to your new reality is another important thing. I've got like a 4-week countdown in the book where, the first week is like all of a sudden everything is free time to you, and it's like this unbelievable liberty that you go through. Yeah. By the 4th week, you're kind of wondering, okay, well, what am I doing with all my time? And a lot of people have bucket lists, and I discuss some of that in relation. And there's so many things. I mean, your relationships with people are completely new once you retire, because you have more time to spend with your spouse, your family, your children. And that can be a good thing and a bad thing in some senses. There's a line in the book, in my book, that says, I married you for better, for worse, but I didn't marry you for 24/7, because a lot of us have, working careers, and we see our spouses on a regular basis, but within time intervals that are kind of quantified.
Yes, like ships in the night sometimes.
Ships in the night, yeah. Whereas now you have all this time with your spouse, and then you start realizing that you have a routine that might be contradictory to what they have, and it becomes almost like it becomes almost like a bit of a negotiation. There's a section in the book. It's not a chapter. It's in a chapter, but there's a section of book that in the book that I call the thermostat wars, where your wife wants it a certain way and you want it another way, and then it's like a pendulum swing back and forth. And it's a matter of as I presented in the book, it's a matter of renewing your relationship with your spouse and renewing your relationship with everyone else. And you can look at that both in a positive sense and a negative sense, but it's up to you to build upon that. And it's, a lot of times it's like going on a first date again. It's like actually going out on dates again and rekindling what you have with your spouse. And then knowing what you want to do with your time, whether it be travel, exploring, passions, hobbies, that sort of thing. It's almost like a bit of a mindfulness that you have to approach your life with and dictate what you want out of it.
Well, I'm in a similar position to you. So this interview is not about me; it's about you. But I will just say,
I'd love to hear.
I'm retired, and I've always fought against the word retirement because it comes from an old French word meaning retreat, and that's the last. That's the last thing that I would want to do or actually do with my life.
Yeah.
I've probably like yourself, I'm as busy as I ever have been. So I prefer to use the word renaissance. And is it?
Sorry, what was that?
Renaissance. Yeah, it's.
Okay.
I think it's.
Right.
Yeah, I look at life as seasons. So you go to school, it's a season. Or you go before you go to school, it's a season. You go to school, it's a season. You leave school, you have work, it's a season, and then you have your kids and all the rest. The different seasons, and one of the seasons is when you actually stop working as such. But what I do think, what I've learned most of all is that you have to. This is what I would say is important for me, but I do think it's probably for a lot of people. You have to have some sort of sense of purpose.
Yes,
and you have to maintain social contacts to keep you almost sort of on your toes and keep you challenged. And otherwise, I think you can just vegetate. What do you think?
I completely agree with that. That you need to have a sense of purpose and a sense of direction in your life. It doesn't necessarily have to be something where you're going back to work or you're working part-time or you have these different passion projects or you're volunteering or whatever. Your sense of purpose and direction could be just exploring the world with your wife and creating a new relationship with your wife that is different from the one that you had during your working days. It really is up to the reader and the retiree to decide what that is. But direction is really important. And personally speaking, I've tested both sides of that, where it's kind of like you kick up your feet and you kind of do everything that you wanted to do with your free time. But for me, personally speaking, that has a very short life. And then at some point, you're looking for more meaning in your life.
Yeah.
Something that you can contribute. And that's sort of where I'm at. Like, I realize now that I'm going to be working probably to the end of my days. And it's a matter of following work as a passion And I have done that. And I think other people can do that, whether they're doing consulting or whether they're volunteering or whatever they do, is finding meaning in your life. If your meaning in your life is your relationship with your wife and the love that you have with her, that's your meaning in life. But it can also be your meaning in life with your children and having an active role in your grandchildren's life and that sort of thing. And it could be helping other people. A lot of retirees turn to mentoring when they're in that stage of their life. And, I think I talk about meaning in the book and finding your meaning. And I think that's very important. And personally, I don't think it's a period of time where you just kind of take the foot off the gas pedal and kind of coast.
Yeah, no, I agree. And what other topics does the book cover, David?
Oh, well, it covers a lot of topics. I actually made a kind of a cheat list because of my memory.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Take as long as you want, David.
Yeah, it's that's the one thing. Like, now that I'm onto a new book, my memory, like the one thing with my brain surgery is my memory is like I won't even remember something that I did 3 days ago. I won't remember a movie that we watched on Netflix like in the past year, which is, it's funny because my wife also has a brain injury.
Oh, right.
So we both have the same kind of reality. Hers came through a different medical process, but she might be writing a book now too. Like, I'm helping her with that as well. So pardon me for my memory. I like to end each chapter with kind of like the new you.
Yes.
How this chapter basically creates the new you. And, like I said, one of the most important things is mindset. When you start out on this retirement journey, and I hate using the word journey, it's so overused, but another thing that I talk about is a gratitude approach.
Yeah.
No matter where you are on the socioeconomic range, when you reach retirement, there are sometimes things that don't turn out the way that you want them to. You're not in as financially as good a position as you had hoped you would be, because life never turns out the way anyone expects it to be. The famous John Lennon quote that life happens. Now I'm not going to remember it. Things happen when. Okay, I can't.
There is I can think of the quote, but I can't remember it either. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right, so we're in the same boat there. I do talk about exercise. I think exercise is also very important to continue. And yes, you're dealing with limitations at certain stages of your life, and I am. My wife is, but I talk about the exercises that you can do at that stage of your life, whether it be walking, Tai Chi, stretching, gardening, whatever. I talk about nutrition and the 80-20 rule, which is basically 80% of the time eat what is good for you health-wise, and 20% of the time don't do that, or you cannot do that. Or you're allowed to not do that, because if you go too hard on your nutrition, you're going to falter and you're going to fall off the wagon.
Where does drinking or alcohol come in this? Do you talk about that?
I don't really. No. I think it falls within the 80-20 rule. Yeah. But that differs depending on a person's health condition.
Yeah.
In the case of my wife, she doesn't drink at all. In the case of myself, I have a glass of wine occasionally. But that really is an individual thing.
Yeah.
So there were certain areas that I didn't want to kind of delve into deeply. I guess that would be one of them. Finances would be another one. I give some general advice in regards to finances, but that's actually going to be the topic of my second book on retirement. So I was going to focus on that for that. This is more about the process. This is more about the transition to retirement and how you can get the most out of it.
So is the book ideal for somebody perhaps who's sort of looking to retire in a year or two, something like that?
I think it would be good for them, yes, because it gives them kind of an idea of what to expect going forward, and it's also quite entertaining. I've had a number of readers come back to me and say they really enjoy the humor in it as well. I do have a ton of resources and websites that I refer to in the book that helps. I talk about downsizing and decluttering because that's a stage that a lot of what I talk about in the book are stages that both my wife and I have gone through. So we have gone through the downsize and decluttering aspect of retirement, and some people, they don't want to do that, but it is a pretty common occurrence as part of the retirement stage. So I do cover that. I do talk about relations with family. I touched on that a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
There is that tendency that once you're retired, that everyone wants to use your time. Hey, can you watch the kids? Hey, can you drive Aunt Mildred to the doctor appointment? That sort of thing. So it's a little bit about establishing boundaries as well. Because your time is your own, but at the same time you want to spend time with your family. So it's a delicate balance, as is most things. One of the most important things I talk about in the book is wearing comfortable shoes.
You must have had experience of not wearing comfortable shoes then.
Well, as an older guy, I'm realizing how important that is, and so I think. Again, this is the humor coming out of it as well. I do talk about what to do as passions and hobbies, and what you should consider, what is really important to you. I do talk about what it would be like if you were single when you retire, whether you've had your spouse pass away or whether you just happen to be single through most of your adult years. And what to do with social interaction at that stage in life. And I talk about relocating to other areas. A lot of people do the snowbird thing, and other people relocate as well. And they use, other people as well use adventure as part of their travel, agenda.
If I could just interrupt there, the relocating. Yeah. I mean, you've certainly, on those subjects that you've mentioned there, and I'm sure we've got a few more. You've ticked a lot of boxes for what I was going to ask you. There's a lot of different things there that you're very mindful of with people coming up for retirement. I think that's great. Really useful. The one about relocation was quite interesting because there are people I know quite close to me who would never relocate because they've got a group of friends. The family might be away, but they've got a group of friends that they don't want to leave them, and they would be concerned that they wouldn't be able to make new friends in a new location. What would you say to that, David?
Well, there is a balance on that. When I do talk about the relocation, most popular points like Florida, North Carolina, Denver's becoming a popular relocation site. College towns are as well. I do talk about a number of things, and family is one of them. Distance from family is one of them, and distance from friends is one of them. But this is sort of like a list of things that you have to go through when you're considering it, and that is important. But so is like healthcare access and pace and accessibility and climate. I mean, some people have to be cognizant of their their needs as far as climate goes, whether it's a dry climate, a cold climate, a wet climate, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But, it really has to be where you are in that stage of your life. Personally speaking, we have relocated, not in a grandiose way. Like, we've moved from Toronto. Basically, we live about 500 kilometers away from our main city. And we talk with our family all the time, through Zoom calls and over the phone. And 500 kilometers is the kind of distance where we made a trip just a few weeks ago. But it still gives us the freedom to kind of go where we want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if you're talking about somebody moving from, say, California to Florida, or,
long way
to Norway or whatever, that's a bigger distance. And it really comes down to personal needs. And, I'm not coming out in this book and saying this is what you have to do. I'm giving readers a list and saying, this is a list of the things that would be important to you, to most people. And you need to kind of categorize out of that list what is the most important and make your decisions based on that.
Yeah.
And that's why snowbirding is such a popular thing as well. People want to kind of move from their inclement climates to something a bit more suitable in the winter, and that gives them the benefits of family as well.
It sounds like a great book. Where can people get hold of the book, Ultimate Gift of Living Your Best Life in Retirement?
Oh, it's on Amazon.
Tell us about your other books that you're writing, because am I right in saying that you've got 2 novels on the go at the moment?
I have 2 novels on the go. I can probably easily say I have 4 novels on the go.
Wow.
I'm a little bit careful about discussing the novels that I'm working on right now, because the writing world has become so different than what it was 4 years ago. It's kind of a sad state of affairs right now that you can write a book with AI now. And a lot of people are doing that. If you actually look at the numbers, the influx of, for instance, I was researching in the horror genre, or mystery science thriller genre recently. And I have these tools and these sources that I use to research this stuff. The amount of books published in the mystery science thriller has increased by about 5 times since the advent, like on an annual basis, since the advent of AI. And there's a ton of AI slop going on Amazon, because people can just produce a book in 2 days. Yeah.
It's crazy.
I've read some of them and they're terrible. Yeah. But they can do that. And it becomes a business model to these people. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is I'm a little bit wary of talking about my books, because somebody might hear this and say, oh, I can take that idea and go have ChatGPT write it for me
exactly.
and publish it. But having said that, I feel like I'm not being fair to you.
Well, just tell us a bit.
The book that I'm writing right now is on the premise that I had in my head was, what if every animal on the earth became sentient and started attacking humans and human infrastructure?
Wow.
And I made that as sort of like an ecological thing, that they were reacting to our destruction of the biosphere.
Yeah.
And so that's what the first book is. That's what the book that I just finished the first chapter to this morning is about.
Yes.
And so it's really, it's funny. I just got through denigrating AI as as a writing model, which a lot of people unfortunately are doing. But I'll tell you one thing: I have used AI as a research model.
Yes,
like the research of the science that would be involved in this. So I come at it from a realistic point of view, and so I go onto AI and I say, what would happen if this? What would the conditions be if AI had decided that the humans were going to destroy the Earth? And how would they trigger this mechanism where animals would become sentient and start attacking humans and human infrastructure and basically create this post-apocalyptic universe? So that was actually quite helpful. What would take me days to research was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. So that's the one book.
Yeah.
Did you want me to continue?
Yeah. No, sure. And if you just talk about the other one as well. Yeah.
The other one is it's a paranormal romance.
Yeah.
It's about a forbidden love.
Yeah.
If I told you, I'd be giving away.
No, I'm looking forward to that coming out.
I could tell you another book that I can tell you about. That is autobiographical. Its working title is The Promise, and it is a story about a man who is caretaking for his wife, who has a mental disability. And he's a successful entrepreneur, and he hires somebody or he doesn't hire somebody, he engages with somebody on the agreement that he could take care of his wife and her special needs in the event that he were to pass away. And so it's almost like a little bit of it's an agreement between these three people that come into agreement on that, and what the benefit would be for the person who would be the second caretaker. I didn't expect to talk about the novels, so I'm a little less prepared. But that's one of them.
If we've got any listeners that think they've got a novel in them, what sort of advice would you give them?
I did a lot of research before I started writing. I watched a lot of YouTube videos about both the publishing business and the writing business and the writing craft and the creativity of writing. I read a ton of books about it, all the famous ones. There's a lot to the business of self-publishing as well that, but that is, it's sort of its own beast. But what I would say is basically dive into knowledge, dive into learning about the writing craft, and it'll start making sense to you, and then just get to writing. Because when I wrote my first novel, I sat down and I wrote 2,000 words in one day. And, the high point is like 5,000 words in one day. And some people can do more than that. But for me, the high point is 5,000. And you don't know who you are until you start writing. I thought I would be, there's a term in writing called, you're either a pantser or a plotter. And pantser being you write by the seat of your pants. And plotter being kind of self-evidently obvious. I thought I was a plotter. And when I started writing, everything took off.
Yeah.
And, your writing is affected by how the story evolves, how the characters evolve. But you're a plotter. You're always thinking plot as well. There's a happy medium somewhere in the middle of it.
Yeah. So you're somewhere in between, are you, would you say?
I would say I'm closer to a pantser.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a line.
And do you find that when you mentioned before we were on air that You were in a sort of flow state. Do you find sometimes when you're writing, a thought will come to you that you'd never have thought before, and then you write that down, it's just sort of magically come to you?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And on the other side of things, do you ever, perhaps if you're going for a walk or something, do you think about the book and you think, oh, that would be a good idea, and come up with some ideas then?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think Stephen King famously said, your best ideas come in the shower.
Do you know what? I started, you probably to help me here. I think we've all got a book. I've started writing 2 books. None of them have finished. I think the most I did was 20,000 words or something. And I got to the point where I was actually, I can't remember what it was. It was something to do with, I was getting to the point where I needed to ask more questions about this character. And the character's son, and I was thinking, well, what does a 13-year-old boy do now when he gets in from school? And I didn't know. I thought, oh, they'd probably be on their PlayStations or something. But then I thought, well, are they? I really don't know. And I got to a point where I was asking myself lots of questions. And if I wanted to bring out a contemporary novel, I would have had to find those out. And it got so much, I thought, oh, I can't be, I haven't got time to do all this. And that's where it got to.
My advice on that is I try to research as much as I can based on who the characters are and the setting and the world building and all that sort of thing beforehand. But once I'm writing, and this is common advice, actually. Once you're writing, you don't edit. You don't fix spelling errors, and you don't stop because you think, okay, well, what does this person in this occupation do? You just keep writing, and then you go back. I mean, the 2 novels that I wrote, I redrafted probably like 5 or 6 times.
Did you?
The important thing about the first draft is getting it all down.
Yeah.
And getting the theme down, and getting the setting, and getting the tone down, and
not just, I suppose, maintaining your creativity, not destroying your flow, your thoughts.
Exactly, because self-editing is what ruins creativity.
Yeah.
And it'll stop you in that flow state.
Yeah.
And that's something I do firmly believe in.
Yeah. You
just keep writing, and then your first draft is always going to be something you go back to and correct anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm talking even typos. Like if I'm typing on my keyboard and I write the word path and I write put an X in it, but somehow or something, you don't go back and fix any of that. You keep going.
Well, David, this has been a really interesting conversation. Some really useful pointers, I think, for people on the verge of retirement. Also, there's something worth taking from what you said about writing, which I think applies to almost any creative endeavour you've been putting off. Stop waiting until conditions are perfect. Stop self-editing before you've even begun. Just get it down. The first draft of anything, a novel, a business, a second act of life, is never meant to be polished. It's meant to exist. My guest today is David Hermakowski. David is author of the book, The Ultimate Gift of Living Your Best Life in Retirement. And you can find a link to the book in the show notes. Thank you for coming on the show, David.
Thank you so much for having me, Robert. This was a very creative and interesting experience for me, and I really appreciate it.